Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, I'm Jen, and today I thought that I would talk about narcissists and their dogs. More particularly my experience with my ex-narcissist and his dog. I found the relationship that narcissists seem to have with their dog really interesting, eye-opening, but also misleading. And I'll tell you why. So as someone who has loved animals since I was a very young girl, you kind of associate people who love animals with good character. And so when I met my ex, who already had his dog, I associated him having a dog with good character, and I assumed that he had a good nature about him. And in dating my ex for well over a year, I realized a lot about his relationship with the dog and why he had the dog, whether or not he truly loved the dog. And I just wanted to talk about it because it's a topic that I have looked for on YouTube, and there's not very many videos on it. I think I maybe saw one or two. And I think it's a really important area to talk about because, as I said, it's kind of common knowledge that people who love animals are usually people who are empathetic. They are people who have good hearts, people that are emotionally evolved, people that are capable of, people that have a certain depth to them, and they're capable of experiencing the love and relationship that you can have with an animal. And I think that is absolutely true. You know, of course, that's not a blanket statement to say that if you have a fear of animals or whatever, maybe you didn't grow up with them, and it's just not something that you've been able to work around, that doesn't mean that you're a bad person. But I do think that for the most part, people that love animals are people that have a great emotional depth to them. And so I found it very misleading when I met my ex, who was a narcissist, to learn that none of those things were actually true. And so I wanted to talk about it. So what I ended up, after observing certain behaviors, I came to a certain conclusion, and I want to talk to you about that. So the first thing I would say that I really noticed about my ex and his dog is that the dog was very spoiled. And again, I am someone who, always grew up adoring animals, cats, dogs, pretty much any animal. Maybe not like snakes or something like that, but I really love all animals. As an adult, as I've grown into an adult, I'm not so super into cats, but probably mostly dogs for me, but I really do love animals, and I'm actually also very allergic, so that has also sort of put me off of cats as well. Anyways, getting off topic there, but I noticed that his dog was really, really spoiled. And I absolutely, I've always raised my animals with so much love and tenderness and empathy. And, I cook home cooked meals for my dogs. So, when it comes to the idea of, taking really good care of your animal, that is not a foreign concept to me at all. My dogs have health insurance. They have, they don't eat commercial dog food. They get everything they need in terms of veterinary care. I take them everywhere I can with me as much as possible. So my animals were always treated with an abundance of love and care. So that's not a foreign concept to me, but when you talk about spoiling, it is the implementation of excessive goods, excessive praise, excessive, like kind of going overboard and then not caring about the other things that are important, such as discipline, such as training, such as rules and boundaries. And you hear about this a lot when you hear about narcissist parents. There's no structure, there's no rules, there's no boundaries, or it's either on like at one extreme of the spectrum. So they're either like no rules, no boundaries, or maybe the complete opposite. My experience with my ex-narcissist was that the dog had absolutely no boundaries. And so I'll give you an example. So there's a proper way to walk your dog. It's generally, if the dog is pulling and things like this, you want to keep that dog on a more controlled, shorter length leash for multiple reasons, right? So one is you're supposed to lead the dog. And if you give the dog excessive room on the leash, there's going to be a few problems with that. One, the dog is going to think that he is in charge and he's the leader, which can in turn actually cause a lot of anxiety in your dog, because your dog wants to feel safe, and your dog can't really feel safe if you are not acting as the pack leader. Now, I'm not a dog trainer, but I don't know, for me, these things always were sort of common sense. I guess maybe too, just growing up with animals, and having my own as an adult, I have learned this over being a pet parent for a very long time. But he would just let the dog have like so much room on the leash. Like, those retractable leashes, the dog would have like the entire like length available on the retractable leash. And what would happen is that the dog would end up either like getting into something he shouldn't be, because he, at that point, like when he was at the max length given on the retractable leash, he would be like out of the owner's sight. So he would be getting into something like that could get him sick, or that was like dirty that he shouldn't be getting into. He would be in other people's personal like space, walking. He actually, my ex actually lived in New York City, and as you know, New York is super crowded. There's a lot of like high traffic areas. I mean, basically every area is high traffic area in New York City, and it's very crowded. And the dog was constantly like walking in people's personal space. And there were many times where we would be walking together to go get coffee or whatever in the mornings, in his neighborhood, and people would be accidentally almost stepping on his dog. His dog was about like, he was about 12 pounds, and, cute, small-ish dog who's short and low to the ground, and, not super easy for people to see in big crowds. And so there were times, a lot of times, where he would almost get stepped on. And it wasn't the dog's fault, it was the owner's fault, because, as an owner, your animal relies on you to keep them safe, especially in an area with a bunch of people. And so this would happen a lot. And my ex's response would be to start spitting out vulgar language, insulting the person who accidentally almost stepped on the dog, not on purpose, but the person wasn't trying to step on the dog, but you're allowing your dog to just have full reign of space. And it's not fair to other people. Like, everyone needs to, especially in a crowded area, everyone needs to sort of mind their own little bit of personal space. But this dog had zero boundaries and was just allowed to walk wherever he wanted. And again, not the dog's fault, but as the owner, you need to be mindful of stuff like this. And my ex didn't do such a thing. So that was one of the things that I started to notice on a consistent basis, whether we were in New York City, whether we were in my state, it was always a problem. The next thing that I started to notice was the fact that he would like excessively spoil his dog, which I started to talk about. So he would do things like give his dog like huge, thick pieces of like whole sticks, 1 to 2 sticks of bacon a day, multiple times a week, which, it was just too much. It was in complete excess. And for a dog who only weighs 12 pounds, even for a big dog, like even like if you had a pit bull, like a dog consuming like a super thick pieces of bacon multiple times a day, like that's not good for your dog. You can a little bit here and there, maybe a few couple bites once a week, if that, might be okay, a little taste. But multiple times a day, like, that's not healthy for your dog. So I started to notice that. Also, like when we would go out to dinner, he would want to bring home like restaurant steak bones to his dog that have seasonings and things like that. Also, like you're not supposed to give your dog like restaurant bones because they could bite into them and become injured. And while my ex would rinse the bones off, it just still was like risky behavior, like all in the name of making, like spoiling your dog. To make, like, it was more important for him to spoil the dog than it was to mind the dog's safety. The bacon, the steak bones, that kind of all goes hand in hand with what I wrote down next, which was excessive daily treats. But like on top of all of the things that I just talked about in terms of food and treats, he would get additional treats on top of that, like dog treats. They were like, dog cookies and dog bones and just all sorts of things multiple times a day, like really, really excessive. The other thing, kind of going back to the walking, which is not really spoiling, but kind of, is so he would walk his dog all over New York City. And as you know, New York City is absolutely filthy. Like, no shade to people that live in New York City. I love New York. It's really fun and definitely a great place to visit. Not personally a place that I would really want to live. But he would have his dog walking all over New York City, like every day, multiple times a day. My ex was retired, so he had the time to walk his dog a lot. But he would walk his dog all over town and never clean the dog's feet. And I don't know, to me, like, I recognize that I'm probably like cleaner than some people, but I just found that really disgusting because his dog would walk into his apartment and not only like be in his apartment, but also would be like sleeping in bed with us, which I thought was just super gross. And but I wasn't gonna like do this job for him. It was his dog, his responsibility. Anyhow, speaking of bedtime, another problem that came up like a few, I would say maybe like 6 to 7 months into the relationship, maybe a little bit further in, but his dog would growl, and sometimes like for absolutely no reason. Now, again, I love animals. I have never had a dog. Well, maybe one time I had my friend's dog growled at me. He was like a shelter, like a rescue type dog. Not my ex's dog, but a friend of mine's dog who lives in California. He had a rescue dog, and the dog was really like skittish and weird. And actually, the dog did attack my leg. It was like a small-ish dog. I was kind of traumatized by that though, because like I love animals, and so for that to have happened to me, it was like really shocking. And I don't know. I can definitely empathize with people who have been attacked by dogs, because even if it's a small dog, like it can be frightening. It's scary. A small dog can do damage. I think that dog's name was Stewie. Stewie was, gosh, it was so long ago. I think he was about 20 pounds, but he did like bruise the skin on my leg, and he did break the skin, and it didn't tickle. It hurt actually. Anyways, that's a whole other thing. But back to my ex's dog, it got to the point, and I don't know if it was a jealousy thing or what on the dog's part. I think the dog definitely had anxiety for sure. He was exhibiting symptoms of anxiety, and that will happen when you don't have any structure, discipline with your dog, because they are in a constant state of feeling unsafe. And so there's additional problems that can build on top of that, just like with parents who spoil their children and don't have any, what a lot of people don't always understand is that love is not just about spoiling. I don't even want to use the word spoiling. That's not the right word. Love is not just about giving somebody everything that they want. It is also about doing the hard stuff too, implementing the discipline, making sure your kids know what it means to pick up their room, making sure your children understand what it means to be respectful of people, responsible, to understand, the important things, having empathy for others, etc. Now, obviously, animals are, you know, can't have like responsibilities, but and so it's a little bit different, but similar in the sense that, you know, a responsible owner is going to ensure that the dog is well trained, that the dog is not a danger to other people, that the dog is not, you know, that the dog is understands what it means to respect others' space. They're not going to jump up on people. They're not going to bite people. They're going to listen and obey when, you know, their owner. And so one of the problems that sort of grew from the lack of training is that my ex's dog had behavioral issues. So like, you know, I would get into bed, it would be dark, I'd have to get up and go to the bathroom or something in the middle of the night, or I would be coming into bed after getting ready for bed in the bathroom, and I'd come in and the lights, my ex used to like all the lights like completely pitch dark. And I would like come into bed and the dog would start to growl, okay, at me. And I had my own dog, and he, you know, he would try to dominate her too. Like the dog would try to intimidate and dominate my dog as well, and she's super tiny. So that started to become a concern, because once I started to see the behavior that my ex's dog was exhibiting to me, my immediate concern was my dog, because she's so small. And when it comes to animals, when you start to see aggression like that, I mean, there's nothing promising that it's not going to happen with anyone else or any of the other dogs in the home, and they can just snap like that. So, you know, it really started to become a big problem for me, and the dog did bite me. The dog bit me, and I don't blame the dog. I do not blame the dog at all. I think that, I believe, you know, it was a really nice breed, from a reputable breeder. It was not a shelter dog or something like this that had, you know, history before coming, you know, before living with my ex. And so that wasn't the issue. What I realized the issue was the lack of training and the excessive spoiling, because that dog felt that he was in charge, or felt that he needed to try to be in charge, because his owner was not. And I know what you're thinking, like, wouldn't a controlling narcissist be the opposite? And I think they probably could be, but they also, on the opposite side of the spectrum, can just want to do the fun stuff. And you might be wondering and asking yourself, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would they only want to be around for the fun stuff? Again, you hear about this with narcissistic parents. They don't want to do the dirty work, if you will, or the hard work, and the, you know, what's required in terms of, sorry, I'm looking at my camera and it looks like it's going dark a little bit. There we go. Oh, now it's too bright. Sorry, guys. Is that better? Wow, this is so weird, the lighting on this thing. You know what it is? I think the lighting, as the lighting changes, natural lighting changes in the background, I think it can mess with the ring light. Anyways, oh, I look like a ghost. Is that better? It's a little better. Sorry, that is so distracting. Oh, is that better? Wow, it's like very delayed. So, as I said, you see that, you hear about that a lot with narcissist parents. that they just want to spoil and they don't want to do anything else. Why do they want to do that? The reason that they don't want to do any of the other stuff, the actual like responsible parent stuff, is because so this is going to go down to, let's see, maybe I can move this. Oh, that is really frustrating. Sorry, I find this like really distracting. Maybe if I push the camera back a little bit. Is that better? So the reason that the narcissist only wants to take part in the fun stuff is because the fun stuff propels the supply. So, and this goes down to, when I started talking, when I began this video in the introduction, I talked about how misleading it is to see a narcissist with a dog, because you think, oh, they must have good character, they must have empathy, etc., etc. The reason that narcissists have dogs and may want to spoil them is because they feed off of the dog's energy, the dog's adoration. You know how so many dogs, what do they do when we walk in the door, right? They are usually like so ecstatic to see you, even if you just have been gone for 5 minutes. My dog does it all the time. I'll go out to take the trash and I come back and she's like, wagging her tail and completely ecstatic that I'm back. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I was just gone for 5 minutes, Daisy. But narcissists love this because, again, they feed off of energy. And it was super eye-opening for me to see this. And there were comments that my ex had made that confirmed all of this for me, such as, when the dog started to bite, and we looked into, I kind of didn't make it an ultimatum, but I was like, this is really a problem. Like, if he bit me. If he were to bite someone else, if he bites the wrong person, like, this could be a really big issue. Somebody could actually report it and you would have to put the dog down. Like, you really can't have your dogs biting anybody because you're putting that dog in danger. This is why training is so, so, so important. It's not bragging rights. It's not to make your dog miserable. No, it's the opposite. It's so that your dog can feel happy and at peace, and it's for the dog's safety and for other people's safety as well, and for the people that are in your life, your romantic partners, your children, if you have kids at home, anyone who comes to visit your home, your mailman. Like, it's so important that your dog receives proper training. But narcissists don't care about stuff like this. They don't really think about this kind of thing. It doesn't even occur to them. All they're consumed with is the idea of receiving the praise, the admiration, the energy from the dog. So the dog really is actually being abused. And it's not something that, like, if you didn't know this, you wouldn't, like I didn't know this. And so I didn't spot it immediately. It took me a few months to kind of catch on to it. I did think from the beginning, I was like, wow, it seems like really kind of excessive. And that's coming from me, who really, I really, really love my animals, like my children, like, they are basically that for me. So for me to think that it was too much, it was like, you really have to know it's like a lot. And yeah, and anyways, I was talking about some of the comments that my ex had made. My ex proposed getting a new dog because it was cheaper for him to get a new dog than it was for him to get a new girlfriend. Those are words that came straight from my ex's mouth, and I was really taken aback by that, because it confirmed to me that he saw the dog as an object. There was no actual emotional, there was no love there, there was no bond there. And I know that not everybody understands what it is to have a love and a bond with your dog, but if you have, then you understand how deep a bond can be with your animal. And you know, there's people that cry harder over the passing of their dogs than their own than their own human family members. So it's I'm gonna try to adjust the lighting on this camera again. Sorry guys. So frustrating with the light. I don't understand why this is like that. Does that help? So anyway, it's yeah, I wanted to come on and talk about it because I think it's important for people to know, to be on the lookout for this type of behavior, you know, as an additional tool, as an additional behavior to be on the lookout for when you're trying to determine if you're dealing with somebody who is a full-blown narcissist, you know. And I always like to remind people that narcissists, the word narcissist is heavily thrown around these days, and it is possible for somebody to be narcissistic but not be a full-blown narcissist, meaning that they suffer from the personality disorder, NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. I wholeheartedly, genuinely believe that my ex has NPD, and it's a very difficult, pretty much it's impossible to deal with. If you stay in a relationship with somebody who has this disorder, is highly narcissistic, you know, you're basically betraying yourself. You are betraying your own well-being, and you are accepting staying in an abusive relationship, because that's what these people are. They are very emotionally abusive, and I can absolutely believe, it's a fact, it's known, that these types of relationships also become physically abusive. So you know, it's really important that if you are involved in this type of relationship, that you disconnect from it and separate from it completely. And it's not easy to do. Anyways, that's not what this video is about. I wanted to just talk about the role and relationship that narcissists have with their dogs. And yeah, I just wanted to talk about it so that you can be on the lookout for this type of behavior, and it can help you to determine who it is that you're actually dealing with, and what that person's true character is. Again, I don't believe that we can look at just one behavior or one thing about a person and make a determination. Of course, only a licensed professional could actually make the true actual diagnosis. But honestly, if you read enough about this disorder, about narcissism. Again, pointing out they are two different things. There's like the full-blown disorder, and then there are just people that are very highly narcissistic. And then there are people who have healthy narcissism, which we should all have. But I think that if you learn enough about narcissism and NPD, you can make a pretty decent determination on your own. I really think so. So I hope that this video is helpful. I would be so curious to know, like, people out there who have had, you know, significant others, spouses, even friends that you think have NPD or are highly narcissistic. I would be really curious to see what your experience has been, or hear about what your experience has been. But you know, I found it really interesting and fascinating to see how similar the behavior with the narcissist is with their animal as it is when they are parents. Because if you think about it, what's the difference really, being a parent to an animal versus being a parent to a child? You hear about it a lot. There's a lot more videos talking about the narcissist parenting style than there are videos out there right now talking about the relationship between the narcissist and their animal. So I wanted to contribute that to the YouTube community, just contribute my experience and my thoughts. And yeah, would be super curious to hear about what your experiences have been. If you're new, please consider subscribing. If you enjoyed this video, would appreciate your support. And if you could go ahead and like this video, that would be great. Thanks, guys.